In Punjab, there's an invisible enemy waging a war on public health. It's a crisis you can't always see, but trust me, millions are feeling it every single day. In this explainer, we're going to break down the anatomy of this health crisis and the massive fight to reclaim the air. So let's start with just one number. One really, really big number. 1.93 million. Any guesses what that is? Well, that's how many people had to get medical care for smog-related illnesses across all of Punjab. And get this, it was in just 30 days. This isn't just some statistic on a page. It's a measure of a massive, widespread health crisis. It's the story of countless lives totally disrupted by the simple act of breathing. Okay, so to really get our heads around what's happening, we have to look at the sheer scale of this emergency. The numbers, they tell a pretty scary story of a system under enormous pressure. And what's so wild is that this goes way beyond just, breathing problems. In that 1 month alone, we're talking nearly 125,000 asthma cases. But look at this, almost 63,000 cases of heart disease and nearly 6,000 strokes, all tied back to this toxic air. It's a full-on assault on the entire body. And here's the kicker. This thing isn't stable. It's not a flat line. It is actively getting worse day by day. Check this out. Over 450,000 of those cases happened in just the last week. And in the last 24 hours alone, more than 53,000 people sought help. The crisis is literally accelerating in real time. And this crisis, it has an epicenter. In a city like Lahore, the hospitals were just slammed. Over 132,000 respiratory cases. That's pushing the entire healthcare system to its absolute limits. This concentration in the big urban centers really shows you where the fight is at its most intense. So we've seen the scale of this thing, but what exactly is this invisible enemy? What are people actually breathing in? Yeah, smog isn't just fog. Not even close. It's this poisonous cocktail of pollutants. You've got things like nitrogen oxides and ozone, all mixed in with these microscopic dust particles. And when weather patterns trap it all close to the ground, it creates this toxic blanket over entire cities. But the real villain, the main driver of all this health risk, is this one specific pollutant, PM 2.5. Now, these particles are unbelievably tiny. We're talking smaller than 2.5 microns. To give you some perspective, a single human hair is about 70 microns thick. So these things are just incredibly small. And their size is their superpower, right? It lets them bypass all our body's defenses, get deep into the lungs, and even slip right into the bloodstream. And once it's inside your body, the damage is both immediate and, really dangerously, it builds up over time. Short term, it's going to trigger things like asthma attacks and severe infections. But the long-term exposure, that leads to chronic diseases of the lungs and heart. We're talking COPD, a much higher risk of heart attack. It fundamentally shortens people's lives. And this number, over 2,000, this represents the Air Quality Index, or AQI. In cities like Multan, it has surpassed a staggering 2,000. Now, for context, an AQI over 300 is considered hazardous. This is almost 7 times that level. At this point, the air is so polluted, you're supposed to stay indoors with an air purifier running full blast, because even a little bit of exposure can have serious health consequences. It's basically an atmospheric state of emergency. Okay, so we've looked at the data, but what does this crisis actually feel like for the people living through it? Let's talk about how this is felt, not just in hospitals, but in everyday life. Because this isn't just data, it's the lived experience of millions of people. A recent survey found something pretty staggering. 68% of people in the country are reporting that the smog is directly harming their health. This isn't just a problem for a few sensitive people. We're talking about a clear majority of the entire population being affected. So what does harming their health actually look like? Well, the symptoms are everywhere. 68% report a persistent cough. 66% have flu-like symptoms. And more than a third of people say they're having trouble just breathing. This is the daily reality of living under that smog. And if you zoom in on Punjab, the hardest hit region, the numbers get even more stark. A massive 77%. That's more than 3 out of every 4 people are feeling the physical effects of this toxic air. So, How on earth do you fight a crisis of this magnitude? The answer, it turns out, lies in mobilizing the entire healthcare system, not just to treat people, but to teach. The government has activated this huge initiative called the Training of Trainers program. The core strategy here isn't just to treat patients as they come in. No, it's about turning experienced healthcare professionals into master teachers who can then spread that knowledge across the entire system. It's a ripple effect. And this quote from the program's charter, it really reveals the ambitious long-term goal here. It's not about a one-off workshop. It's about creating a self-sustaining system of expertise, something that can be activated every single smog season, year after year. So, what does this new Health Army's training playbook actually look like? Let's take a peek inside. The program has this really methodical four-part structure. Day 1, it's all about understanding the data, the epidemiology. Day 2, you master the clinical response. Day 3 is fascinating. It's learning how to actually teach effectively. And then on day 4, it's all about strategy, planning how to cascade this knowledge down to every single clinic and hospital in your district. And this training, it focuses on practical life-saving skills. Things like, how do you quickly identify a severe case? How do you manage a sudden surge of patients? And, critically, how do you communicate the risks to the public? They even use simulations for hands-on practice, so it's not just theory. So we've seen the sheer scale of the problem and the incredible architecture of the response. Now let's look at what it really means to fight back against an environmental health crisis of this magnitude. You know, the contrast here is just so stark. On one hand, you have the overwhelming, almost invisible threat of the smog, and on the other, you have this highly structured, systematic plan being deployed to fight it. So yeah, this is a story of a crisis, but it's also a story of a really organized, expert-driven response. And this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. The training is happening, the strategy is set, the playbook is written. But the question remains, can this newly mobilized health army truly win the war against the air itself? And maybe more importantly, what does this fight in Punjab tell us about the future of public health in a world where environmental threats like this are only going to become more common?